Welcome councillors and staff, and I declare the meeting open at 2 p.m. The Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the traditional owners of our region and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Do we have any apologies for today? There are none, but the Mayor has notified myself and the General Manager that he will be councillors and staff, and I declare the meeting open at 2 p.m. The Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the tradition. That's awful. Sorry. Mayor Young has notified myself and the General Manager that he will be late for this meeting due to unforeseen circumstances, and as such, I will be chairing this meeting today. We have a late report, 8.1. I need a motion to accept this report into the agenda. Councillor Churchill.
I move that we accept 8.1 Community Small Grant Application, Friends of Orford Bird Sanctuary, into the agenda.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Seconded, Councillor Arnold. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. So we have the declarations of interest or conflict. Are there any at the table today?
Yes. Acting Mayor, if I could declare an interest in item 8.5, Prosso Rivermouth Advisory Section 24 committees.
Yep, thank you. Any others? No? Thank you. We'll go now to item number 2, confirmation of minutes. There is a recommendation there. Please may I have a motion from Councillor Robinson.
That the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on Tuesday, 22nd of March, 2022 at 2 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Councillor Browning. Do you need to speak to the motion, Councillor Robinson?
No.
No. Any other discussion with regards to the minutes? No. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. 2.2, date and purpose of workshops held. There is a recommendation at the bottom of the page. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Breeny.
I recommend. I move the council notes the information.
Thank you. And a seconder to that motion? Councillor Arnold. Any discussion? No. That being said, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Unanimous. We're moving on to item number 3 of the agenda, public question time. There are no questions on notice, but we do have 3 questions without notice. From 1 is Mr. Luck, 2 is Lynn Hatton, and 3 is Rosemary Wood, and our General Manager, Mr. Greg Ian, will read them out for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. The first question is from Greg Luck. Question 1, there's 2 questions. Question 1, when will the financial comparisons, modelling be provided and to whom? I'm reading verbatim here. Question 2, as previously asked in email correspondence that has remained unanswered, what is the maximum percentage increase, in brackets, the safety cap, that a ratepayer in Glamorgan Spring Bay Council will be subjected to this upcoming financial year? There, in addition to the upcoming Community Connect sessions, tomorrow and the following week, there'll be a written response provided to this question on the May agenda. Question 2 is from Lynn Hatton. Again, 2 questions. In part, are councillors comfortable with supporting the cynical attempt to limit accusations of discrimination under the Disability Discrimination Act by changing the name of the structure that many of the community voiced in consultations they just don't want? This relates to the Vishnu triangle. The second part of the question, The second question relates to financing the project. If the budget is around 500,000 for the Triangle Development Project, and some of the grant money has already been spent in updating the car parking and pathways and consultant fees, does council believe there is adequate funds to complete the project? And if not, what parts of the project will be dropped or deferred? Again, there's a response will be provided on the May agenda. I'd just like to make a note there, though, that there has been fairly significant or very significant community consultation on this project, the last round of which was just a few days ago. Rosemary Wood has a number of questions, and I think given that we do have a restriction of 2 questions per member of the public, I will try and just run through this as one question. It is both a statement and a question. And Rosemary Wood is representing other concerned ratepayers, about seven or 8 in number. Do the mayor and councillors accept that the Prosser River Advisory Group did in fact produce stage 1 of a master plan addressing the issue causing the most public concern? This went to a public consultation in February 2020 after only 4 meetings of the Prosser River Advisory Group. That it was council staff who did not convene further meetings or councillors that did not replace vacancies left by resignations and those members unable to attend meetings. That the fencing as structures on Crown land that is proved not temporary in nature was erected without license and did not follow due process or best practice or have public consultation. That the ferry terns, the protected bird species using the sandspit, have not returned to the site for 2 consecutive breeding years. The last bred outside the fenced area in 2019/20, such that temporary fencing was erected as it is best practice. Conditions that applied to the DA 02013 permit granted in 2002 to move the Prosser River mouth into a southerly location required that the resulting backwater be kept flushed by parks to a standard where it was acceptable to residents, and this was signed off by the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council. That question will be responded to at the May Ordinary Council meeting.
Thank you. We now move on to item 4, Planning Authority. There's a recommendation on the page. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Browning.
I move that council now acts as a planning authority at 2:08 p.m.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Robinson. My apologies, I should have read the preamble before that. So under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulation 2015, the chairperson hereby declares that the council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 4 of the agenda. We do have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. So we now go on to 4.1. There is a recommendation on page 21 of the agenda. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Breeny.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I move that pursuant to Section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay, DA 2022/33 at 50 Harvey's Farm Road, Vishnu, in brackets CT 45761/3, close brackets, for the construction of a dwelling and a visitor accommodation building be approved with conditions 1 to 12 and with advice A to J.
Thank you. Can I have councillor Arnold?
Thank you.
Councillor Greenie, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor. A previous development application was looked at by council at this site and for several reasons was not accepted. This development takes into account the concerns of council at the time that were expressed, and it seems to be, in my opinion, to be an acceptable way of dealing with the issues in relation to accommodation where there is multiple dwelling or a dwelling and multiple accommodation buildings at this site, even though the area itself is sometimes defended as a rural type development. The planning scheme caters for this type of development at this site.
Thank you. Councillor Arnold?
I concur with councillor Breeny's response. Thank you.
Thank
Deputy
you.
Mayor.
Anyone else wish to discuss this? For or against? That being said, I will put the motion. Those in favour? A unanimous decision. Thank you, councillors. So we go to now page 25, 4.2, DA 2022/48-555 Warbs Esplanade Vishnu. There is a recommendation on page 33. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Arnold?
Thank you. I'll move pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay, DA 2022/48 at 55 Warbs Esplanade Vishnu, CT 20781/1, for the construction of a dwelling be approved with the following conditions numbered 1 to 7 and advice A to I. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Arnold. A seconder for the motion, councillor Robinson. Councillor Arnold, do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, I think that I think this report was very well written and I'm comfortable with the advice I've received. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Likewise, acting mayor.
Does anyone wish to speak for the motion? Against? Councillor Simons.
Yeah, I just got a couple of things. I've got some concerns about the project being in effect a second-hand house. It concerns me a little bit about the amenity of the neighbours. And I know as a planning authority, as our planners pointed out to us, that we can't take into account that the block will most likely be subdivided. I do have a concern that it's quite high. It's within regulation, but it is also very close to the neighbour's house at 1200 millimetres from the side boundary, and that's not including the fascia and eaves, which puts it most likely another within 800 mil of the house next door. So whilst I understand that it's a project that probably ticks the boxes for the planning department, I'm not quite sure it fits in with the amenity of that area. I think probably we should think about what quality of build we may put next to people that are already there and have spent quite a substantial amount of money on their properties. So that's what I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Councillor Breeny, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I also have some concerns, although I'm not sure whether it's a concern that can be adequately addressed by the planning scheme. But there is a comment made in the report on page 31 in relation to item C under performance criteria on the first group of tables. And the item mentions not cause an unreasonable reduction in sunlight to an existing solar energy installation. And the planner's response, the dwelling will not cause an unreasonable reduction in sunlight to existing solar panels on adjoining properties. My concern is that I'm aware that any shading on a solar panel causes a serious problem in relation to the effectiveness of those solar panels. In other words, if you shade one panel, then the whole performance of the other 20 or 30, whatever it might be, or 2 or 3, is directly impacted to a much more extended extent. It's not as if 10% causes a 10% reduction. A 10% reduction in sunlight on panels can cause a 50% reduction in the effectiveness of those panels. It's an electric thing. I don't know anything about it, but that's what I know. My concern is not so much the reporting of this situation, but I may have a different definition of what is unreasonable. I may have a different definition of that to everybody around this table. And I wonder if there is some way of measuring what is unreasonable and what is reasonable. We're asked here to make decisions based on things that, where in this case, it won't cause an unreasonable reduction. It won't cause an unreasonable disruption to amenity to have a driveway that's gravel. It may not, unreasonable. What is unreasonable? Unfortunately, the planning scheme doesn't define it, so we can't deal with it here. But it is a concern of mine that when we say these things and we accept these things, we take into account situations like when you shade a solar panel, it doesn't mean that you're just shading it for part of the day. You're actually affecting the situation to a greater extent than just the percentage of shading. I will be supporting this motion, but with a serious concern that we need to be much more diligent in the way that we deal with unreasonable situations.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, am I able to direct or request Mr. Bonner to respond to that? Your concerns there?
I'd be welcome if he did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bonner.
I'm not sure how you want me to respond to how we determine unreasonableness. Is that there's no clear guidance on what is reasonable or unreasonable, other than the court say what a reasonable person, what would be reasonable in the circumstances. So looking at the aerial photographs that we have available, the only site that has solar panels is the one to the southwest. So while there may be some impact, I don't know how we would say work out a percentage wise what you're saying. The legislation says it doesn't cause an unreasonable impact. So I would say as an extent of overshadowing is not unreasonable when you're looking at within a built-up urban environment.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Yes, I do understand the difficulty, and I have no problem with the report response. It's just a matter of, we've got to be very well aware that unreasonable is an individual decision. There is no definition in the planning scheme of what unreasonable is. Thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Churchill.
Yes, I could just follow up on that. This block is not yet subdivided. There is reasonably no reason that house couldn't be moved further to the east, and it would take away all of the problems around that exist around this dwelling, including any overshadowing of those panels. I totally agree. We've got to start to become really aware of the overshadowing of these panels. It is actually costing the owner of those panels money in terms of how much power they're generating. And they've gone to the trouble of putting it there, not knowing, and how could they ever predict that a house would go there and how that house might impact them. They've obviously put it a long way back on their block. They've tried to put it in a place where they could reasonably anticipate there would be no overshadowing. But now, obviously, especially in the wintertime, when the sun's a bit lower in the sky, those panels will be seriously impacted, I would have thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simon.
Just a question through you, Madam Mayor, to our planner. Often we'll get a shading plan with these permit applications, not with this one. No.
No, overshadowing diagram was
Yeah.
not provided,
No.
nor was it asked for.
Okay.
Any more discussion on this? Just give me a second, guys, please. Councillor Arnold, it was your motion. Do you wish to close? Okay. Okay, that being said, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That is Councillor Breeny, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Browning, Councillor Churchill, Councillor Arnold. Those against? That's myself and Councillor Simons. Thank you. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulations 2015, the chairperson, I hereby declare that council is no longer acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 4 of the agenda. Can I have a recommendation, please? Councillor Breeny.
I move that council no longer acts as a planning authority at 2:21.
Can I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Browning. Favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Move on to item 5, which is the financial reports, which are in your attachments, and there is a recommendation at the bottom of the page. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Churchill.
I move the council receives and notes the financial reports as attached to this report for the period ended 31st of March 2022.
Thank you. And a seconder for that, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, I have no issues with any of those reports.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson. Anyone else wish to speak or ask questions? That being said, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. We've got section 6 of the agenda, which is section 24 committees, and it's 6.1 is Natural Resource Management Committee minutes of the 16th of March 2022. There is a recommendation on page 46. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Green.
I move that the minutes of the Natural Resource Management Committee meeting held on the 16th of March 2022 be received and noted.
Thank you. A seconder, Councillor Arnold. Councillor Breeny, do you wish to speak?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor. Just one or two of the items mentioned in the minutes indicate that there is still a perception that council lacks a certain degree of cooperation with the committee. I'd like to think that that was not the case. Following the meeting the Zoom meeting that we had, or the Teams meeting that we had with the two representatives of the committee, it was clear that there were issues that needed to be addressed, but I didn't feel that there was a lack of cooperation from council, more a need to probably be a little bit more diligent in the way that we look at things. But otherwise, the minutes are fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the minutes? Councillor
If I
Arnold?
may, Deputy Mayor, following on from Councillor Breeny's comments, I'd just like to say, as Council knows, I've been involved in the NRM committee for a very long time. And with the assistance of Mr. Woodward, who's been taken over a role of supporting the NRM committee, I think the tide is turning in terms of the views of the committee. And certainly all of the committee are very much committed to continuing to work with council in relation to all matters NRM. So,
yeah, thank you. If I may, councillors, with your indulgence, I'd like to, I took not umbrage, but reading the minutes, there were some very concerning things that stood out within them with regards to councillors. There is on page 41 or page 4 of the minutes, the meeting was conducted by the general manager. All council were present except for Councillor Woods and Councillor Simons. I would like that to be noted within the minutes that we are not there because of work commitments.
if I may, Deputy Mayor, when that comment was made at the NRM committee, I did actually clarify that for the participants at the meeting, that quite often it's impossible for both you, Councillor Simons, and in some cases myself, not able to attend Community Connects or workshops because of work commitments or personal commitments. So that point has been clarified with the committee.
Appreciate that. That being said, is there any other discussion with regards to these minutes? Yes, Councillor Simons.
I'd just like to thank the volunteers that are on the MRN committee for I think they just do a fantastic job. Very committed, and what they do and the level they do it at is just fantastic. And I think we're lucky to have them.
Thank you, Councillor Simons. That being said, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. So we go now to item 7, information reports. The first report is from Director of Works and Infrastructure, Mr. Peter Porch. There is a recommendation on page 51. Is there a motion, please? Councillor Robinson.
The council notes the information.
A seconder for that one? Councillor Browning. Councillor Robinson, do you wish to speak to your?
Yes, I do, if I can, Mayor. Just a couple of points with the work request categories. I note they're being completed regularly, and the amount of requests and concerns is still on the downward slope, which is good. But I would like to note, and I guess Peter and his team are really aware of this, that stormwater is still a significant issue for our municipality, and a continued focus is necessary there. And I'm sure Peter's aware of that. And just to say that, I think I've said this before, just like to commend Peter and his team for the progress they've made with what is an inexhaustible list of things that are required in our municipality. And there's a huge list of projects which are mentioned there and also in the budget report, and they're just, progressing really well. And I know people in the community are really pleased with that. And as we have mentioned before, it's not easy to get work done at the moment, but we seem to be making really good progress. So thanks to Peter and his team.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Browning, do you wish to say anything? Is there any other discussion with regards to this report? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The comment I'd like to make is in relation to the report that right at the very end, it's the road closures and Anzac Day, Tribunna, RSL March. I was actually the coordinator for that particular for Spring Bay RSL, but I'm making this comment in the context of being an elected member. I do thank Mr. Porch, and I did previously, for organising the road closure. But at this point, I'd like to acknowledge the wonderful work of Darren Smith and his team in implementing the road closure that was approved by council yesterday. After the service, I received numerous positive comments following about not having to contend with traffic noise during the service. And it did make it a very respectful time for everybody involved. And I sincerely thank Darren and his team for achieving that.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Anyone else to wish? Councillor Browning.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two issues. The first is on page, well, they're both on page 49. Parks, playgrounds, reserves, walking tracks and cemeteries. The third dot point indicates and I'll quote, council is unlikely to meet the criteria for recompense of costs. This is in relation to COVID signage, I understand, and through you, Mayor, if I could have an explanation as to why we don't meet the criteria. Is it a major issue? And my second point, probably be answered by the same person, Mr. Porsche, if possible. Albeit the comments that have been made by fellow councillors today. Down on the work request completion and source graph, last month I made a comment on how I was very pleased to see the graph in a downward spiral, but I noticed there's about a 40% increase in requests received, and there's also about around about 30% of them not completed. I'm just wondering whether or not that was some issue or incident, or whether there's an upward climb at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Certainly, yes, the first query regarding the signage for the playgrounds, and that was in response to a question that
Can
you
turn
had.
it up, please? Sorry.
The first response there is in response to a question from Councillor Woods from the last meeting, where a query was made in relation to council being able to obtain some recompense for costs there. So I went online, had a look at the circumstances under which one can be get compensated from the state government at this time. The guidelines were going to be released on April 21st. I haven't confirmed there, but it looked from the information on there that through the emergency support grants and loans, council did not meet the criteria as a business.
Okay.
So that's the first one. The second one, with regard to the requests, I did query these just to make sure we had the numbers right here. I'm advised that the staff have been concentrating on completion of a number of requests, because I did see that our internal requests identification, internal inspections and the like was down from where we had been, and the intent is they've been focusing on those that are in the system that haven't been completed to date, and a further round of inspections will go into the system soon to be able to identify those number of things internally. Otherwise, I couldn't say it's about wet weather, the number that we've received, because it's been extraordinarily dry. So I am not sure at this stage why we've had that bit of an upturn there in requests received, but we'll continue to monitor that and just see that it doesn't increase unnecessarily.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment on the report? With council's indulgence, I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Porch, if I may. And maybe it's more a statement other than a question. There may be a question at the end. With the contract mowing people that come around and do our nature strips and the like, and I appreciate that they really don't have any invested interest in keeping the place tidy, but the last mow that they undertook, especially around Tribunal Orford area, it was left relatively and quite, not relatively, but it was left quite messy. So we had a lot of grass sprayed up over the footpaths, and so footpaths were actually looking like they were grass because that's how much was over there. Is there anything in their contract that sort of requires them to have some form of care in how they leave the mowed areas?
Well said, Deputy Mayor.
Certainly in response, Deputy Mayor. return business would be one of the reasons why you might want to do a nice job.
Mm.
So there's certainly that aspect of, you know, of our monitoring of the works. We found I think the time previous to that, we had pretty poor performance out of Buckland Way, and I had a number of residents complain about aspects of that, and we got them to come back and improve and do the areas they hadn't done. Now, some of that can come as occurs. You know, we get turnover of staff and things like that. It's the same with contractors, because there are a couple of them involved. And I believe that there was a bit of turnover of staff there, and it was about, you know, bringing the new people up to expectation, which you would hope that they would do. So it's just it's a contract management thing. We just need to, again, be giving them feedback about their efforts and letting them know when the performance has been sub and require improvement on that. So this is the first I've heard about the Orford area this time around. So we'll make that known to them and request improved performance in that area.
Yeah, and in particular, if I may just draw your attention to the area around the netball area where there's that new footpath there, that was just covered in grass. It was brought to my attention, and so, you know, maybe it was remiss of me not to get in touch with you so you could get in touch with them, but I'm actually bringing it to your attention now. Excuse me. And I know I note that there's lots of grass spewed everywhere with them, and I know, and I also want to take this opportunity, if I may, to acknowledge the work that our council staff do with maintaining their areas of grass and lawn to a really, really high standard. And when you have this contractors come in and there's no standard at all, in my opinion, in regards to what I've seen, it sort of doesn't look good. People are saying that it's actually council staff, where in actual fact it's not. So thank you very much, councillors, and for your comments, Mr. Porch.
Deputy Mayor, I wonder if I could ask Mr. Porch a question that relates to what you've just been speaking to.
Yes, you may.
Mr. Porch, does council have any control over the contract work that happens on the verges on the highway? Do we, I guess my question is, do we have the capacity to complain to state growth about the poor way the verges are done? Because it's all linked with what the Deputy Mayor was talking about with the mowing. Along Buckland Strait is a particularly good example of a very poor job of work.
Certainly through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we can certainly. We have no direct employment of those contractors, but we can certainly make our liaisons with state growth. We can certainly make those issues made known to them, and our dissatisfaction with their performance on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, councillors? No. That being said, I will put the motion. All those in favour of the report? Unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. So we now go on to 7.2, Manager of Building and Marine Infrastructure, Mr. Adrian O'Leary. There is a recommendation on page 55. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll move that the council notes the information in item 7.2.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Simons. Councillor Arnold, do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, Deputy Mayor, I believe you're going to cover the matter that I would speak to.
Thank you. And Councillor Simons?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the report? Councillor Browning.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor. The Swansea boat ramp, are we going to continue to lobby Mast about how to move forward with it? I mean, if no one's using it at all.
They are. People are using it. I've actually seen them use it.
Yeah.
Through the Deputy Mayor, I have contacted Mast and asked them if there's any further works being done. And their response to me is like, as with other boat ramps, as in the report, they're telling me that people using the ramp have to just go with the tides and the weather. I have seen people using it, different boats. Obviously, the boat ramp was built back when 2017-18 to accommodate for larger trailer boats because of the shift in the sands and the silting up and so forth. However, that's come about. a lot of those large boats now have reverted going back down to Solworks, launching from there. Smaller vessels are using the bow ramp. I've seen them use the bow ramp at the tides, and it is a matter of going out at high tide and working at tide so you come back in high tide, which is the case with quite a few boat ramps around the state. It's the same as Swansea now. The aim of having an all-tide, all-weather boat ramp, it was never going to be all-weather because you were always going to have the northeasterly would always be a problem unless a groin was built. So that was always still going to be a problem with wave action over the boat ramp. But the tides, the low tides for some of the larger vessels, particularly the soft sand, when the vehicle reverses the trailer back onto the soft sand, there's quite a few people do get bogged. So I think the warning that what Mars is telling me, and I have asked them repeatedly to be able to inform councillors as to what's happening. They disabled people now just have to watch the tide and the weather.
Thank you. Yep. Any other? Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mayor. Just my comment in relation to this issue. I think a lot of people are aware of the fact that I've been raising it since the thing started to fail. My disappointment in relation to the way that Mast have seemingly tried to fob off, and I use the word advisedly. It's not a good word, but I use it. We've had a meeting here with Mast Executive and with Council, and at that meeting it was made clear that what they intended to do was to commission a marine engineer to resolve the issue. That is, to find out what can be done to fix it. Council, of course, is in no position to demand or dictate in any way. It's not our boat ramp at the moment. It will be one day. But the fact that Mast seem to be ignoring the fact that that structure in its original form has failed miserably, doesn't function as a proper boat ramp the way they said it would. And the fact that they are seemingly walking away from the responsibility of either resolving the issue or closing it down seems to me to be a deprivation of their responsibility. And I'm very disappointed in the fact that the report by our manager, buildings and marine infrastructure, is simply passing on what they have said, and that is that boat owners use it at their own risk. That's basically what they're saying. That is just not good enough. Not good enough for a state authority to do that, especially with the expense that was involved, and the statement being that it was going to be, yes, you know, it never will be an all weather, but it'll certainly be an all tide. We're supposed to be an all tide boat ramp, an improvement on what was there. What's happened, by the way, is that the construction of the big new boat ramp has made the old boat ramp totally unusable. And that in itself just seems to be ignored by Mast. I just don't get it. And it's really disappointing. It's nothing to do with council or council staff or council management at all. It's just a matter of a state authority abrogating their responsibility, as far as I'm concerned. I'm very disappointed. The other issue I'd like to mention is on page 53, pardon me, .3 at the bottom of the page, the cricket practice nets at Swansea Recreation Ground. It's really good to see that this is finally getting away. Just for the record, the history was that every other cricket club in the municipality was granted cricket practice net funding through the drought relief situation. The only reason that Swansea did not get a grant in that round, pardon me, was because of a misunderstanding that Swansea already had funding for their nets, which they didn't. They were trying to raise funds. And when they found that all the other cricket clubs had got the granting for they were most upset. They weren't upset. They were just disappointed that they missed out. But to see it here now, I'm very pleased. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Bruni. Any other comments or questions? No. I have one, if I may. Yesterday, as we all know, it was Anzac Day, and I attended the Tribunner service and laid the wreath on council's behalf. And it was asked of me, being there on council's behalf, if I could pass on to council their thanks and appreciation for the new cenotaph there. And they, the president, Mr. Michael Nichols, he said that working with council was a pleasure, and he was very appreciative of how they were treated with regards to where the cenotaph was going. And all things, you know, COVID that we've had to deal with, it was really pleasant to be back, to be able to stand and pay our respects to our serving people. And it is really nice to drive into the community now and see the cenotaph there, and see the flowers around the base there. It's a real reminder. It's not buried somewhere down on the corner of Vickery Street anymore. So thanks, council, on behalf of from I should say the Spring Bay RSL sub branch. They are very appreciative. Thank you. So any other comments or questions with regards to item 7.2? No? Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. So item 8 is officers' report requiring a decision. 8.1, draft communication and engagement framework. There is a motion on page 57, recommendation, sorry, on page 57. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Churchill.
I move that council adopts the communication and engagement framework as attached to this report.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Churchill, did you want to speak to your motion?
We've workshopped this one, and I think we all have an understanding of what is required here and what we need to do, and how this will hopefully better link us to community and to others that we need to communicate with. I really have nothing further to add.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson?
No, nothing to add.
Does anyone else wish to have a yes, Councillor?
I just have a question, Deputy Mayor. In the risk matrix, it says officers will consider the feedback and provide a report to council following the conclusion of the consultation. But there's no reference to a consultation period, but rather it appears to assume there may be community feedback after the approved document is placed on the website. So my question is it proposed to have a consultation period, or is what we see is what we get, basically?
Thank you. Mr. General Manager.
Through you, Acting Mayor, the idea would be to have community feedback through our normal channels, which would be the web mainly, and Facebook. We expect that there will be feedback on the way that we conducting our current community consultation, i.e. our community connect sessions, our Chamber of Commerce meetings, our BCDA meetings, etc., which are all included in the plan. The thing with this framework is it is based, it's not a Glamorgan Spring Bay Council framework. It's a framework based on the guidelines, the GATT guidelines for consultation, local government consultation in Tasmania, and the IAP2, and I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for, international. Anyway, it's a globally accepted best practice standard of community consultation. So we wouldn't expect it to change much. There may be a little bit of frittering around the edges with community feedback, but it captures everything we believe that the community expects of us, and it is an international standard.
If I may, Deputy Mayor, to the General Manager, I'm not arguing against it, General Manager. I think it's a good move. My only comment would be is, yes, we get this, we do a lot of work, we get all these documents, as long as they don't sit on a shelf and just end up being motherhood statements, because so many times in the past it's happened. And I take your point that this is internationally accepted, so let's work with it.
Thank you. Any other comment? That being said, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to 8.2, the delegation register review. There is a recommendation on page 59. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move. The council delegates the powers and functions contained within the delegation register as attached to this report.
And a seconder for that motion, councillor Breeny. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, only that it's important to have strong delegations for the general manager to ensure the smooth operation of council. So I'm comfortable with what's been put forward.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Breeny?
Thank you, Mayor. Just concur with Councillor Arnold on that issue, especially in relation to sub-delegation, which is a very important issue as well. As long as there's control guidelines as to what can be and can't be, that makes it easy for everybody. No grey areas. That's the most important thing.
Thank you. Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, I'm totally in favour of the document. It's just that I think it needs a clean-up. It's clearly an old document. It still refers to things like REMPAP, Resource Management and Planning Appeal Tribunal, which should now be TASCAT. And, you know, there's just little bits and pieces right through the whole document. Too much for us to go through, too much for us to do. Just need someone to go through, pick up all these things. In one other place, for example, the what was it? The local, it's referred to as the local planning schedule. It should have been local provision schedule. Little things like that, just to tidy it up and make it an updated document, I think would be a good thing to do while it's in this process of being accepted.
Thank you. Councillor Browning.
Going along from what Councillor Churchill said, I just noticed crematorias. We don't have any. Do we need to have it in our delegation? Which is page 137. So
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we do. It's the name of it, Crematoria and Burials Act or something. The act includes the word crematoria, even though we don't have a crematoria. We do manage burials, and so that's the act that manages that. We have two cemeteries that we need to have cemeteries managers for, etc.
it just said closure of crematoriums. Which I don't know. I mean, it's just a
I think through you,
Cambria Green want to have a crematorium, don't they?
through you, acting mayor, I think it's the wording directly out of the legislation. So we don't have any option but to incorporate it. Just a point, if I may, acting mayor, just Councillor Breeny's suggestion of the sub delegations. There's still some work to be done there. That's not included in here, as the report suggests, around the sub delegations from the general manager. So there'll have to be a separate instrument of delegations for each of those as well. So those will come. I don't know whether they'll come back to council. Those can be dealt with at my level, but just you know, that's not included here. This is purely the general managers.
Thank you.
And if I may, Deputy Mayor, to the General Manager, I think it's important for us, for everybody to realise that delegations can be amended at any time. There's no actual time frame for them to be amended. So if councillors were of a mind to go through this and do it, they could actually bring it back to council, as I understand it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So I'll put the motion then, councillors. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Going on to 8.3, Vishnu beams, and there is a recommendation on page 62. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Simons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that the council approve the application for the event assistance by way of a $2,650 cash contribution through the events grants.
Do we have that on this? So councillors, you can see that the motion is that council approve the application for event assistance by way of $2,650 cash contribution through the events grants budget.
Yes, I'll second.
Councillor Arnold, you'll second that one? Councillor Simons, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just that I think it's a great event for Vishnu. It looks that it is an event. So I see no reason why the funding wouldn't come from the events budget. The events budget hasn't had a lot taken out of it, whereas the small grants part of the budget has. So this is a really fantastic thing for Vishnu, and it's certainly worthy of council support. So I think that's the reasoning for the change for me.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion or speak against it? That being said, councillor Arnold, did you wish to say anything?
No,
being
I
the seconder? No.
I agree with councillor Simons.
Okay, so that being said, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much, councillors, and I'm sure that the coordinators of that will be very happy. So we've got 8.4 natural resource management new committee member. There is a recommendation on page 65. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor
I'll
Arnold.
move that council endorse the appointment of Mr. Howard Colvin to the Natural Resource Management Committee and congratulate him on his appointment.
Thank you. A seconder for that motion, councillor Breeny. Councillor Arnold, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Only to say that Mr. Colvin was an excellent candidate for inclusion in the NRM committee, and I'm more than happy to support this motion.
Thank you. Mr. Councillor Breeny.
No further, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment or questions? No. That being said, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. So now on to 8.5.
Expression of interest, so I'll
yes.
leave the debate.
Thank you. Councillor Breeny is now leaving the room at 2:58 p.m. Thank you. So there is a recommendation on page 68. Can I have a motion? Councillor Robinson.
That council note and acknowledge the work of the Prosser River Mouth Advisory Section 24 Committee from 2018 to 2020, and 2, disband the Prosser River Mouth Advisory Section 24 Committee effective immediately.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. A seconder for that motion, Councillor Churchill. Councillor Robinson, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, through you, Acting Mayor, I think there has been quite a bit of consultation with the community surrounding, the issues that have come up as a result of the Prosser River Advisory Committee forming. There was quite a deal of angst, as we all know, with different groups of people wanting different things. And I think now the council have actually formulated a master plan for the area involving parks and wildlife and all the different parties that need to be involved. I think we've got a good result. I know there are people that perhaps would have liked the Section 24 committee to continue with what they'd started with a master plan, but I think there's been ample time and it's time to actually move on and get something done. And I think the master plan that's been produced is a good result, not only for council, but for the community.
Thank you, councillor Robinson. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, just briefly, just to support councillor Robinson and to acknowledge that this thing's been in gestation for a long, long time. And the staff now have taken a little bit of a different approach to it. And I think, and I congratulate them on their efforts, because the past, we know the failings of the past with this process. They haven't been good. It's been divisive to community. Perhaps now we have a way to move forward that is going to hopefully reunite and get all parties surviving together. They mightn't always agree, but hopefully there can be some good compromise between community desires and the environment that's been created here. This is a man-made structure now that we're dealing with, and it has been a long way from perfect. So I thank the staff for taking this one on and progressing it so far in a relatively short time.
Thank you, councillor. Is anyone else? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, I don't want to change the motion or anything. I mean, we're saying note and acknowledge, but I wonder if we could include the word thank that committee for the work they did, because as Councillor Churchill and Councillor Robinson have both alluded to, there's been a lot of, pardon the pun, but water under the bridge since, but they did do a lot of work in the initial stages, and I think that they need to be thanked from council for that. So the word thank you could be just put into the letter. I'd appreciate it. As I've said on numerous occasions, it doesn't cost anything to say thank you.
That's
no problem.
Thank you. I actually had that down to Councillor Arnold. It's all very well and good to note and acknowledge, but to thank people, it doesn't cost anything. And it has been rather a tumultuous time, and we can't blame it all on COVID. So I'd like to acknowledge and thank them as well. Any other comments or questions with regards to that motion? No. All that being said, well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it. That is 6. Miss Murray. Just note too, please, that our mayor has arrived safely.
Thank you very much.
And that Councillor Breeny has come back into the room. So we are up to, this is a late agenda item. I'm just putting that in front of you there. And then we're up to 8.6, which is on page 69.
Thank you very much.
So we have 8.6 plastic-free places Tasmania program. There is a recommendation on page 70. No, it's not. It's on page 70. And I have a motion, please. Councillor Simons.
I'll move that council advises the Minister for Environment that Glamorgan Spring Bay would be pleased to participate in this program and actively engages with the program delivery agents to play council's part in minimising environmental harm.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Simons, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Just very briefly, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's just a great initiative, and it's well overdue for our municipality if we can keep our stop using single-use plastics and what have you. That we're all the better for it. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. Councillor Robinson.
Just concurring with what Councillor Simons has said, Acting Mayor, it's great to see that the government are putting forward a policy and an opportunity for us to participate in something that's, you know, can only have positives.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to?
I wish to move an amendment to the motion. And the amendment to be, but not to support any restriction being imposed upon farmers that might prevent them from baling and plastic wrapping of hay or the like. In support of that amendment, I note that practically every farmer
Point of
And-
order, you can't speak to it until there's a second.
Sorry, yes,
Yeah,
that's quite true.
Thank you. Yep.
Yes, if I can have a seconder.
So is there a seconder for that amendment? Through the lack of no seconder, the amendment is not accepted. Is that correct? Yes. So we now move back on to the original recommendation, and councillor Browning wished to say something.
Through you, Acting Mayor, I agree with what everybody said. I think our community needs to be looking to reduce its footprint on the environment and for the future of our flora, fauna, and for our next generation. So I think it's really important.
Does anyone else have a question or a comment? I'd ask councillor Breeny.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on page 70, just a clarification. I think it might be just a typographical error. The fourth dot point indicates under officers' comments, assist with and media, and then in brackets, start brackets, provide quotes or attend media opportunities without any closed brackets. I just, is that meant to, well, can I have a clarification as to what that dot point means? Thank you.
Can I suggest it might be, through you, Mayor, it might be assist with the media instead of and?
So that would probably read then assist with the media and provide quotes or attend media opportunities without any brackets.
Or enclosed.
Or enclosed
alternative
brackets.
Closed bracket.
Enclosed, yeah.
It's really
Thank
just
you.
typographical.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, if I may, to the general manager. Is this going to, is the workload that's possibly going to be generated from this request from the Minister for Environment going to impact greatly on the staff workload already?
Through you, Acting Mayor, we're very mindful of work that needs to be done in this sort of space, just in recycling generally. And of course, that does always come with a resource requirement. We will manage whatever needs to be done in this space, bearing in mind that it's not just Glamorgan Springbank Council that's doing this alone. It's state-led, and we will be supported by them as opposed to us supporting them. But as has been said around the table, this is a really good initiative, and we shouldn't be stepping away from it.
Thank you. So is there any more comment or question?
Just through you, Acting Mayor, it does say there, of course, that it's there'll be no cost to council or to retail as the program's fully funded by the Commonwealth Government. I mean, that doesn't preclude our council staff doing extra stuff, but at least it's fully funded.
Yep. Yeah, no, I take your point there.
Yeah.
Councillor Simons, being your motion is, did you want to close?
No, I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That being said, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That is Councillor Breeny, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Browning, Councillor Woods, Councillor Arnold, Councillor Simons, Councillor Churchill. Those against is Mayor Young, Councillor Young. Thank you. The motion is carried. So we now move on to 8.7 Buckland footpath request. There is a recommendation at page 72. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Young.
I move that the project be referred for consideration of inclusion in future capital works programs and grant funding opportunities for works of a kind where council's strategic risk consideration can inform prioritisation of projects.
Thank you. A seconder for the motion, Councillor Breeny. Councillor Young, would you like to speak to your motion?
I don't think I need to speak to the motion. I think the report makes it clear what it's about. So I don't wish to.
Thank you. Councillor Breeny.
Exactly the same. Thank you.
Could I just make a comment? I've had a couple of phone calls in the last couple of weeks about, people wanting a footpath here and there, not Buckland, but obviously that's come up as well. And it is part of our infrastructure, and we can all think of areas in our towns that need footpaths. I'm thinking of, north of the main Orford Bridge. I've had people asking about that up near the Blue Waters there. I know that's a state growth highway, but there's lots of other areas where we need footpaths. I'm just wondering if the infrastructure, Peter and his team had thought about or have developed a list of priority list maybe for new footpaths in the municipality, because clearly it's something that requires grant funding. I understand that, but I mean, if this is a request from Buckland, there's probably another 10 or 20 that could be requested elsewhere.
We have the development in development towards an ongoing development, and that is a 10-year capital works program. So within that 10-year program, there are a number of our renewals come up with that, where the bridges required at particular times. We have provision in there for footpath programs where we're looking to get funding to upgrade our existing footpaths in renewal. And then we have within that a list of locations like this where there is a public pressure, if you like, a request from the community for new footpaths, new curbs, whatever it might happen to be, stormwater, the whole lot. And in that, we're effectively developing a list so that when those opportunities come up, where if council should look to include a capital allocation for footpath or for any other thing, or grant funding comes up, that we can then bring those projects forward and with some bit of assessment of them for a recommendation to council to allocate funds to those in that way.
Thanks, Peter. Through you again, Acting Mayor. But it's not just, the question I've got there is, I guess, it's not just public pressure. Your team would be identifying areas as well, not just people writing in and saying, we want a footpath.
Certainly, and when we look at footpaths, there are areas that we look at. So, where are the areas where there is high use? Are there? You look at your aged care homes. You look at hospital facilities. You look at shopping centres. You look at those areas where there's high footpath traffic or high foot traffic as being areas where we'd identify and say, well, look, there's a gap there, or there's a need, a higher need because of the numbers of people who might be walking in that area. You might look at certainly in the instance of Buckland or Orford around the Blue Waters there. You look at, well, what's the traffic speed? How many people are impacted positively by the inclusion of footpath there. So there are a number of factors that would come into any recommendation to say these are the areas that we believe are high priority for these reasons, and then over to council to make a decision on priority.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other question or comment with regards to this? I have one, if I may. Or two, but it's not introducing anything new to the report or to the recommendation, but we have on the officer's comment about the speed limit in Buckland, which is 80 now. Several attempts have been made by the Buckland community to have the speed limit reduced, and it's been knocked back. And also there is a bridge there without a safety rail. My pet. So there's another one I can get stuck into state growth with regards to safety, pedestrian safety. So, but there's, like they talk about, there's no footpath in the highway in Buckland. Orford is 60 kilometres an hour through there. Buckland's 80. That's a huge difference in speed.
A comment there, even Cranbrook, which is even smaller, 70.
Yes, that's exactly right. Thank you for your indulgence there, councillors, with my quip. Any other further questions or comments? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we have now move on to 8.8 Vishnu Triangle final design for tender. There is a motion on page 75. A recommendation? Can I have a motion? Thank you, councillor Simons.
I would like to move that council endorses the proposed design and authorises officers to proceed to tendering with a view to construction.
Thank you, councillor Simons. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Young. Councillor Simons, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor, but I'll just save my comments for closing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Young?
I don't have.
No.
anything to add.
Does anyone else? Councillor Breeny?
Thank you, Mayor. Acting Mayor, sorry. I think we were all made aware of comments sent to us via email in relation to the project naming here and changing the name of the project to enable consciences to be cleared in relation to wheelchair access. It played on me a little, and I was disappointed that the amount of expertise and qualified professional engineering advice failed to come up with a method to avoid having to do that. Providing access to wheelchair for a view at a lower level was the least we could do. I'm disappointed that we couldn't do better. I understand that it's difficult, and things like lifts and things like that are probably financially or design-wise out of the question. But I am disappointed that we've had to do a little bit of spin doctoring and wordsmithing to ensure that this project is a legitimate project under the current building codes in relation to access for disabled. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comment?
Sorry, you acting Mayor, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. I guess it's been a long consultation period with this project, and a lot of people have had the opportunity to have input into it, and you're never going to please everyone with a project like this. And although it's not a perfect development that satisfies everyone's wishes, I think the consultation that's been undertaken is just about as much as council could do, and I'll be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion or against it? Councillor Simons?
Thanks,
You can close debate.
Madam Acting Mayor. I'd just like to take a moment perhaps to address some of the representations that we got just at the last moment on the project, and maybe ease their concerns a little bit. I do reject the idea of one of the representatives saying that the project wouldn't welcome people with physical disabilities in Vishnu. I don't think that's correct, and because the project does improve the facilities for anyone with physical disabilities in the restrooms, in the improved pathways, improved lighting, and its pedestrian safety. So it does tick a lot of those boxes, and we did have our accessibility audit undertaken as a result of those concerns, and I think that's been satisfied. Another concern was from a representative that we had no structure plan, and this was all done without any consultation and forethought. In actual fact, we do have a structure plan for Vishnu. We have had since 2014, and this project was actually informed by that structure plan. And I will just read from that plan, if I can, which, as I said, this informed the design process at the very start. And part of that says in one of the paragraphs, the fractured commercial centre has resulted in an unidentified central focus point for town. Whilst the triangle of land at the intersection of the Tasman Highway and Foster Street is a natural focus point, it is completely isolated due to the present traffic management system, management arrangements. It then goes on to say further on in the structure plan that one of the opportunities for Vishnu is to revitalise the triangle area of central Vishnu as a key focal point of the town. So to say that it had no underlying structure plan or underlying planning to it is also a little bit incorrect. There was another representation that said we should possibly redirect the grant money. And that's just not possible because the grant is specific to that space and to that project. So we can't put it towards another project. I think RV camping or something was suggested. That unfortunately isn't an option. And then one of the last concerns from a representative was that they didn't particularly like the design of the project. And I've got a personal opinion about the project and how it looks and how it will look when it's finished, but I don't necessarily espouse that publicly too often, because what I do is I put my faith in the design process that the council has gone through here. And we engaged a nationally awarded landscape architect for this project. So I put my faith in that initial brief was informed by the community, and he took that away and developed the design. So I don't think there's anything else you could do to get a better result for what's going to happen when it's finished. Most people that are experts in their field generally get it right. So I think that's what we've done with this process and procedure. We've given it to someone and taken it out of the hands of the community in a sense to let him design what will actually look good at the end of the day. So I'm happy with all those things. The consultation side of it has been extensive. I don't think there's been probably a project in Glamorgan Spring Bay that's had as much consultation. This kicked off in 2014. It by default has actually been through the rounds twice. It was previously approved by the former council before this council was in place, and it is again potentially being approved here today by this council. So I think as far as a project goes, as far as a community bringing a project to a council, this really is the gold standard, because I just don't think as a council we could do any more to seek the approval that we need to confirm that this project should happen. So I'm really comfortable with it, and I hope the other councillors are. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So that's the close of debate there, councillors. So I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much, councillors. So we'll now move on to 8.9, Wylangta Road response to state government.
Thank you, Deputy
Yes,
Mayor.
councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a motion that is alternative to the recommendation, and I have provided it to Ms Murray for council. My motion is that council, in response to the letter from the Department of State Growth dated the 13th of September 2021, advise the department, 1, council is pleased that the preliminary assessments of options and costings have commenced in response to the government's commitment to investigate the sealing of Wylangta Road. 2, council looks forward to reviewing those preliminary figures with all stakeholders prior to making a formal decision about the future pavement of Wylangta Road. 3, notes that if the decision is to seal Wylangta Road, council has significant concerns in relation to its future maintenance and management as a local government road. And 4, council would seek to rescind the decision of the 26th of April 2017 and the subsequent Gazette notice of the 17th of May 2017 that the road become a local government road.
So councillors, are you reading that up there?
If I may, Deputy Mayor, my reasons for formulating the motion in this way will become clear when if I'm allowed to speak to it.
Okay,
if I get a
so
seconder.
I will need a seconder for the
I'll second
motion.
that motion.
So councillor Young,
Thank you.
councillor Arnold.
Thank you. If I may, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Firstly, I thank the Director of Works and Infrastructure, Mr. Porch, for his response to my out of session questions, and there were numerous of them. and his advice that at some point ownership of the road by council had been determined for asset management and the corresponding reliant financial purposes. Until approximately 2017, this was only the first 5.3 kilometres. It appears from Mr. Porch's research that in May 2017, the balance of the road that is in our municipal area was added to the asset management system. As far as I'm aware, prior to the closure of the Woodchute Mill, the section of road beyond the 5.3 kilometre mark was maintained as a private forestry road. My own research discovered that there was a notice placed in the Government Gazette of the 17th of May 2017 as follows. By a resolution of Glamorgan Spring Bay Council on the 26th of April 2017, Council declares that Wylangta Road Orford from Rebborn Road to the council boundary will be maintained and managed by council as per section 12 of the Local Government Highways Act 1982, and takes over the portion as described in the grant deed, which was attachment 3, marked as Glamorgan Spring Bay Council as a local government road. This probably answers why it ended up in our asset management system mid-May 2017. I'm assured by Mr. Porch that the road is a council-owned road, even though the Gazette notice states that it will be maintained and managed. Does that constitute formal ownership divested to council from the Crown in right of Tasmania, or only a responsibility to maintain it as a local government road? I haven't been able to find anything in either the Roads and Jetties Act or the Local Government Highways Act, and I'm certainly not contending that it isn't the case, just that I can't find it. I fully appreciate that for the last 5 years, we've had Wylangta Road in our asset management system and have maintained it in accordance with the gazetted notice. Given the government made a commitment to the community to explore the possibility of sealing Wylangta Road during the Paradise Gorge shutdown, surely the only response that is required to the letter from the Department of State Growth is that council is pleased to note that that preliminary assessment and costings have commenced. And in response to the government's commitment to investigate the sealing of Wylangta Road, and the council looks forward to having further input after proper consultation with the community, and when the results of the assessments are complete, particularly in relation to the future maintenance responsibilities of the road, sealed or otherwise as a local government road. An apology for our tardiness in not responding to the letters of July and September 2021 might be helpful too, but that's a whole nother story. My reason for moving the motion is that the letter in the attachment to this agenda item is not asking for a council decision, but rather our views on the matter to be factored into the preliminary assessments and costings. The reality is that council may prefer the road to remain unsealed for all the arguments put forward in the report. But is that what the community wants? Those people that we represent? I believe the answer is no. Earlier in this agenda, we dealt with the communication strategy. If we were to advise the government at this juncture, we prefer the road to remain unsealed if they're not prepared to take ownership without proper consultation with our community. Surely we're at odds with our commitment to consult on matters of importance. And number 4 in my motion actually puts them on notice that we prefer the ownership to be sent back to the government if the sealing is the option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Councillor Young, Mayor Young, being the seconder, do you wish to speak?
I just want to say something about it. About an hour ago, I drove over it, and it's a bit rough and ready, but we've done a very good job in our section of the municipality, but south of our municipality, the road is appalling. It'll cost a lot of money to seal. Someone has to pay for it and someone has to maintain it. My recollection is that on the opening of the Tasman Highway after the across a river area was cleared for traffic, the Minister, Michael Ferguson, at the time said that government would seal the road. I don't think my recollection's wrong. I didn't write it down. Some things I forget, but I didn't forget this one. Otherwise, I have nothing further to say.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make a comment or have questions with regards to this motion? Councillor Breen.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion to me looks quite sensible. I'd like to find out whether there are any issues there that concern management.
Mr. General Manager.
Well, through you, Acting Mayor, certainly the concerns around the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of a sealed road as opposed to a gravel road is significant and something that needs to be considered in the short term. Whilst we may all still be here, maintaining a brand new sealed road is at relatively low cost while you're still in your first cycle of reseals, etc., etc. Once you get beyond 10 or 15 years with a bitumen road, those costs do ramp up significantly. And the question of, is it cheaper then to maintain the sealed road as opposed to its former gravel road? You would find when you do the numbers, it would have been cheaper to leave it in a gravel state. I understand certainly that there's a lot of positives around a sealed road, a lot of benefits, but that's something that needs to be considered here. The other thing is the cost. Wallanta Road in its current form, its geometric alignment, etc., etc. It's not just a matter of putting down black bitumen on top of what exists there. There's a significant amount of work that needs to go into making that road safer and trafficable as a sealed road, bearing in mind that your speed limits are going to increase. In terms of this motion, that Councillor Arnold has put up, I don't see any issue with this, but I'd like to hand over and see if the Director of Infrastructure has any comment.
Certainly through you, Madam Acting Mayor. It's an improvement on the original.
Thank you. That answers my question.
So, if I may, Deputy Mayor, to the General Manager, I take your points, General Manager, but my concern around this agenda item is we were being asked, well, the way I read it, we were being asked to make a decision about the future of Wallanta Road without actually getting all those preliminary assessments and options and that the government, in their commitment to look at sealing, we're trying to achieve. And so that's the only reason. But I wanted to have the opportunity to flag to the government that, hey, if you decide to seal it, we may not want it as a local government road afterwards. So that's why that wording is like it is.
Through you, Acting Mayor, can I just make one comment? And I totally agree with what Councillor Arnold's saying and our General Manager and Director of Infrastructure. The bit that sticks out to me there is in point 2 there, sharing those preliminary figures with all stakeholders, because as Councillor Arnold alluded to, we haven't really consulted with the community at all about this. And it's probably something, once we've got some figures and some more information about it, if it's going to go ahead or not, that we do share that with our community, given our new policy.
And if I may, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Robinson, that comment was really the government sharing the preliminary figures with all their stakeholders, because they actually have 3 or 4 owners on Wallanta Road. So they've got to provide all this input to all their shareholders as well as, or stakeholders, as well as us providing it to our stakeholders. And whether our ratepayers would want to have an increase in, in their rates to cover the maintenance of the road and whatever. But until we get those figures, we don't know what we've got.
Yeah, I agree.
And through you too, Acting Mayor, I think 2 is important to stay in there, because it also, as a road controlling authority, we need state growth, needs to look at Wallanta Road in the context of the rest of the highway.
A tourism
and where
road.
the priorities lie is Cherry Hill a higher priority than the sitting of Wallanta Road, etc., etc. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor, can I make a comment? I won't cite the minister, but a minister did say to me that they'd had advice that it cost over 30 million to properly base and seal the Wailancta Road to its junction with Green Creek. And that road, Green Creek to the bottom end or southern end of Wailancta Road, is being substantially upgraded at the moment.
Thank you. So is there any more other comments or questions? Councillor Arnold, being your...
Oh, I think I've said quite enough. Thank you,
I was
Deputy Mayor.
about to say you have, but anyway. So,
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
sorry about that. A bit cheeky. That being said, then, councillors, I'll put the motion that's up here on the board. All those in favour? That's a unanimous decision, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank Councillor Arnold for the work that she's done in regards to research and all that with regards to this contentious issue.
Thank you.
So we now move on to 8.10, which is our late agenda item, community small grants application for Friends of Orford Bird Sanctuary. And the recommendation, is on page 3 of that report. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you. I'll move that council approve the application for community small grant funding to the Friends of Orford Bird Sanctuary for $1,000 for 2 representatives to attend the BirdLife Australia's National Beach Nesting Birds Conference in Moonta, South Australia, from the 13th to the 15th of May 2022.
Thank you. A seconder, Councillor Robinson. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Only that I understand that I believe Councillor Brini may have attended a similar conference a couple of years ago, and I believe that it was very worthwhile. And I also understand that the volunteers that have put up their hand to go are so committed to this that they are prepared to fund the balance of the costs in their own right. So I would really, and this is a very important part of our NRM structure in terms of council as well. So I think I would really ask councillors to consider approving this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Councillor Robinson?
I just concur with what Councillor Arnold has said.
Yes, Councillor Brini.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I did attend this very same, similar conference, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, as a councillor. It was part of, I think, councillor training or councillor whatever. It was probably one of the most informative conferences I've ever been to. I believe that one of the reasons why I attended was because at the time I was appointed to the now defunct Prosser River Bird Sanctuary Committee. I assume it was.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I didn't know.
Councillor Breen, you just alerted me to what I should have told you when you walked back into the room. The motion was passed.
Yes, I was a member of that, and as a member of that, the council at the time believed that I should attend as a training issue. It was the most informative, and I would recommend that it might be worthwhile if there is budget availability for the relevant staff, a member of staff to attend to ensure that the latest in this sort of information might be passed on as part of their training. Whether or not there's any budget availability, I don't know, but I would be endorsing that sort of approach as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Arnold, your
No,
motion?
thank you. I think the report and Councillor Brini's comments speak for themselves in the support of the motion.
Thank you. So that being said, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Move now on to notices of motion. Item number 9. There's a notice of motion from Councillor Simons. Need to move.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move that that council write to Taswater and have them acknowledge that there are sewerage overflow problems on the northern end of the foreshore track between Murray Street and Allen Street, Vishnu, and request answers to the following questions. What is the issue causing the overflows? What process is in place to upgrade the system? What is the timeline for any proposed actions on making upgrades?
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Breeny. Simons, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, it's been a bit of an ongoing problem at Vishnu. I was speaking with a Taswater or a contractor that actually turns up to try and fix what happens there, and he's been there 12 times in the last 12 over the last 2 years. He's been there a dozen times, he said, making repairs. So it seems to be a continual problem. I just wonder if we can get some acknowledgement of it, and just to let, I think we owe it to the residents in the area to let them know where it's at and what might be done to alleviate it.
Thank you. Councillor Breeny, do you need to?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Taswater need to stand up.
Is there any other question or comment on this motion? Let's do it. Thank you. I commend Councillor Simons for this notice of motion. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We've come now to item number 10, which is petitions. We have none. Is that correct? No petitions. And item 11, questions from councillors. So 11.1 questions on notice by councillors. There are none. 11.2 questions without notice by councillors. Are there any? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I note that earlier in this agenda, we approved a communication framework, which seems to be an ideal framework to take our ratepayers on the journey of this year's rates discussion. And I also note the General Manager's comment in the questions from the public. But it's also our commitment from last year to consult with the community in relation to the rates. But seeing we're fast running out of time in order to undertake meaningful consultation with the community prior to having to set the rates. My question therefore is, when will the rates modelling be available for communication to our stakeholders?
Thank you.
Through you, Acting Mayor, we hope to have the rates modelling done by middle to end of May. We will be talking a bit about that at the community consultation sessions tomorrow and next week, Wednesday. And we're going to have, and I haven't spoken to council about this yet, but we're going to have another community connect session, we believe, to actually go through some of the detail with the budget and the rates, proposed rates resolution for adoption at the June 28th meeting. So prior to that, with your endorsement, I haven't got a date yet, but we'd like to have another community connect session. So both tomorrow, Wednesday, and a community connect session prior to the to certainly the fees and charges in May, but also to the rates and budget in June. Also, there'll also be council workshops on the 10th of May and the 17th of May.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any
very
other
much.
questions without notice from councillors? No, I have three. Yes.
Sorry, to you, Acting Mayor, if there's one thing I just want to highlight to council is that we are, as you're probably aware, in the right in the middle of our negotiations on the EBA, Enterprise Bargaining Agreement. So there are some unknowns there. There's some assumptions that we've made prior to this, obviously, when we developed our long-term financial management plan. You may be aware, or I'm sure you're aware, that CPI has gone up quite significantly in recent times and currently sitting at about 4%. So there's going to be some impacts that we're going to have to manage and factor in to our modelling. Hence, we are being a little bit, I suppose, cautious in terms of our approach and making sure that we can get the right information out there in a timely way, but also factoring into some of the unknowns that exist right now. There's also the fuel. There's other things happening on a global scale that obviously we can't control, but assumptions that were made earlier on in the piece when we developed our plan may be impacted.
Thank you. I have 3 questions, if I may. I will pass these on to Ms. Murray. First question is, why was the demountable skate ramp at Duck Park in Swansea removed? And I'm happy to take these on notice. And the second one is, there is little for the children of Swansea to do by way of riding their bikes in a safe and controlled manner, so to speak. So there is a pump track at the school, but I've also been asked, will council consider looking into and investigating the possibility of a bike track like what we have here in Tribunna? This is, we know, not just for children, but but for into the future. So that's my second question. And I'm sure there is a scheduled timelines for maintenance of road verges by state growth, like council has with our own road maintenance. However, there's some very, very deep, and I've actually seen them, road verge issues on the way out of Swansea coming this way, I suppose on the southern part of Swansea. It's quite deep. It falls off the side of the road in a dangerous manner. Are we able to, as a council, get on to state growth to see whether they're going to do some mitigating works there to alleviate the problem? My 3 questions, and I'm happy to have them taken on notice. Thank you. Okay.
Can I ask a question about the last question on notice that you asked?
Not really,
Or not?
but I'll let you.
Thank you. Do you think that it was a state growth problem that the road drops down, or is it something that councils was involved in?
It's out of our jurisdiction, Knock. It's not. It's on a state growth road, but
So
it's
you
just
think it-
outside of Swansea.
It might be that state growth caused the drop off.
Yeah,
By
but
the way, it's designed to build things.
not sure.
Through the acting mayor, I think I know the area that the acting mayor is talking about, and it is quite a severe shoulder drop off from the edge of the bitumen. What happens with a lot of traffic is the gravel gets spewed out over time, and that can become quite deep. And if you go off with your on the left hand side, if you're traveling south with you, it can become it. So state growth do have a program. It's their road. They do have a program of shoulder repairs, and we will certainly get on to them. I've no doubt that you'll see them there doing shoulder repairs in the near future.
Thank you.
It's a traffic use problem.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so in accordance with the requirements of local government meeting procedures, regulation 2015, I am going to declare the meeting closed to the public in order to discuss the following matters. So it's item 1, Orford transfer station lease. As per the provisions of regulation 15.2E, the security of the in brackets, the council, councillors and council staff, or 2 in brackets, the property of council, of the local government meeting procedures regulations 2015. Can I have a motion to move into closed session?
I'll move that council moves into closed session at 3:49 p.m.
And a seconder, councillor Breeny. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. The meeting is closed we are moving into closed session at 3:49. Thank you.